Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. I do want to say my little thank yous, if you'll bear with me, because as you know, it takes a team to put something like this together. It doesn't just happen accidentally. And we did have some partners in this endeavor, strong, good partners. And one of them, I want to thank Christina Justin from GPEC. She's just been really awesome in helping us. Where is she? Thank you, Christina. And that means that obviously one of our major partners was the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. I want to thank the Buckeye Valley Chamber of Commerce who partnered with us, and especially I want to thank Estrella Mountain Community College for letting us use their facility and being a partner in this endeavor. Well, we know what we're here for tonight, and that's to kind of see what all to talk about when it comes to solar and renewable energy here in Arizona. Much of the talk is why Arizona isn't taking a lead when it comes to industry, and how can we position the state. We do have some challenges, and we'll talk about that this evening. But mainly we're here to learn more about the industry, how it would benefit Arizona, and specifically what this industry would mean to the Southwest Valley. Goodyear Mayor James Kavanaugh will be monitoring for us tonight. And at the end of the discussion with our roundtable, we will have questions from the audience. So there will be an opportunity for you. I do want to thank both Goodyear Mayor Kavanaugh and our Mayor of Avondale, Marie Lopez Rogers, for their leadership in this state to further the advent of solar and renewable energy in our state and Southwest Valley in particular. So thank you. I'd also like to let you know who our participants are tonight. As I mentioned, Mayor Marie Lopez Rogers, Barry Broom, who is President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, David Bendler, APS Statewide Economic Development Manager and member of the Arizona, that didn't come out right, Arizona Association for Economic Development, Harry Paxton, who is the Economic Development Director for the City of Goodyear, and Soren Puskow, President and CEO of EOS Consult. Thank each and every one of you for participating tonight. And now I'm going to ask our Mayor Kavanaugh to come and handle the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sherilyn, and thank you for coming. This is a fine tournament. I think that the West Valley has demonstrated to our CPEC friends that we do care about this subject, and of course we should. It's important to us, I think, because we're going to derive from the discussion this evening to what extent should we in Arizona become involved in renewable energy resources. It's not as simple, we should. It really needs serious discussion and determination. And if we find that to be a positive response, to what extent do we want to be involved as a leader in the nation, and what else a leader on this planet? Because we certainly have the opportunity to do that. What I'd like to do today, this evening, is start off with a presentation by Barry Broom of GPEC. Barry is going to introduce us to the subject and the potential of House Bill or Senate Bill 1403. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership in this area from a very broad perspective, very briefly, and then Harry will talk about it in a more specific sense, how what leadership can be accomplished at the local level in our various cities to accommodate this potential. Then we're going to open it up to our panel, and I'll be asking the panel several questions. And subsequent to that, we'll invite you to ask questions. Is that all right? So we'll move in that drive right now, I should say. And we'll start with Barry.
Thank you. Okay, so here we are, kind of looking forward as a community, and I think when we think about economic models, I kind of back into them. And you know, when you look at the valley, there's about 1.8 million people working in the valley. And then when you think about the current economic situation that we're in, both from a budgetary standpoint, which is second only to California. We haven't seen the budget deficit yet coming out Mountain West, but Nevada may have passed us. But if you read the article Sunday in the Arizona Republic, the budget deficit coming up next year is larger than the discretionary budget in the state. And that's a real problem. And so then when you take a snapshot of Arizona and you go, well, you only have spending issues. And then you look at Arizona's spending practices compared to other states and you go, you're about 45th in spending. I mean, to create that kind of systemic budget deficit, what's the problem? How can you be that far out of whack when you're 45th in spending? You're going to have that kind of deficit, like at least maybe 20th, 15th. But then when you look on the economic model side of this, and you see things, like, I'm going to have to go to the previous one. You might have to go do this with me, KJ. I'm used to a thing that circles. But when you look at the job performance, can you not break that on the keyboard over there? Just do previous slide.
Just can't make any mistakes.
There you go. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, good. So when you take a look, one of the things that I think is probably one of our greatest strengths at GPEC is analyzing, the economy and really understanding it. Of course, our job is to promote and brand and market the region and bring industry here, but understanding it is really important. So when you look at this fall from grace that's occurred in the valley and in Arizona, the question that you have to ask yourself is, how does that happen? And of course, I'm an Ohio, Michigan guy, and of course, Michigan is always on the front page. Something I never thought I'd see. The President of the United States fired the CEO of General Motors. I didn't think he could do that, but it was kind of an amazing thing to watch. And so now in this topsy-turvy period in our national economy, if you take a look at Michigan as really kind of the symbol of what's wrong, and then you take a look at the issue of sustainability, you're looking at Michigan's economy having sustainability issues because of its dependency on automotive, but yet Arizona's dependency on construction jobs is actually larger than Michigan's dependency on automotive. And that is an example of the kind of instability and volatility that has kind of peaked and valleyed this market over many years. People will say this is a lot like the 89-92 crisis, or this is a lot like the 79-81-82 crisis. But what happens on these peaks and valleys, as this market gets bigger, the state gets bigger, the peaks and valleys are going to be more exaggerated and going to be more systemic. And then, of course, every time you peak and valley, since I use General Motors and Rick Wagner as an example, eventually you run out of time. General Motors has had boom and bust and union problems for 50 years and 40 years and 30 years. And eventually these structural problems got deeper and bigger. Eventually the company ran out of time. Now they're relying on the government to survive, and their CEO's been fired. So here in Arizona, we're still a very young state. The window to correct this issue is still in front of us. Letting it pass over and over again might not be the best idea. But when you think about Arizona in 2011, are we going to look like Michigan? No, I predict we'll be in the top 5 in the U.S. in job growth again, even though we're 49th right now. You'll see, a quick recovery of the housing markets. I think the housing markets will be fully recovered by 2012. And you'll see pretty strong momentum in 2011. And I think with what GPEC does, we'll be doing pretty well in 2010. But those growth periods mask the sustainability question. So the real question for us is, if you're looking at Arizona and you're looking at that, where are we going to get 100,000 jobs in this region in the next 10 to 15 years that are going to continue to enjoy growth, but to stabilize this economy so it's less dependent upon construction? And so when you think about that, three factors have to occur. Number one, what industry is growing at a rate to where it can actually produce 100,000 jobs? You have to be a pretty strong growth industry to be able to do that. I mean, there's, depending on the numbers, roughly 45,000 aerospace jobs in the entire state of Arizona. There's now less than 33,000 semiconductor jobs. So where are you going to get 100,000 jobs that shift you away from construction over a 10-year period? And where are you going to get it from an industry that you're competitive in? You know, not make one up because it's a good-looking industry and not have the translating activities to succeed. So, you know, from our perspective, you know, it's going to be in the solar space. And it's going to be everything from R&D, engineering, testing, materials, manufacturing, distribution. This is a comprehensive industry. One of the things that I like about the solar industry is it's a materials play. I haven't done a lot of work on nanotech in my career. Reason being is nanotech will probably deplete jobs. It'll probably be a productivity gain in some business models. There'll be less jobs. I'm interested in more jobs. And materials play creates a lot of jobs. Manufacturing jobs are great jobs for semi-skilled people. You know, obviously, this industry loves two levels of work performance. They love engineers, and they love two-year technical people. And we're sitting in a community college right now that's part of the Maricopa College Community Network that is probably the best community college system in the United States at producing two-year technical talent. I love community colleges. You know, you can get in, you can afford them. When you come out, you know, you got gold in your hands. The other key talent that's really important to this industry is the semiconductor space. You know, there's a very, ingot kind of manufacturing concept in solar, you know, it's very similar to a wafer technology. Yeah, it's an electronics material technology, just like semiconductor. So Arizona is, you know, people say, oh, solar, the sun. I go, solar, semiconductor engineers, and two-year technical talent. And so the sun is going to be very important to us, but as far as competing economically, the deliverables on this workforce, I think is really, you know, one of the unique strengths of the valley. And there's the whole chain we'll be going for. These are the kind of jobs that that occur. So when you hear someone say, well, the first people that are in the market, we'll back up there, lightning's going to strike me, isn't it? I don't want to hold on to anything electronic, you know, because I want it to be blunted when it hits me. But so when people talk about solar jobs, there's a lot of discussion about solar jobs. And of course, there's going to be a real interest in the industry to sell demand activity in Arizona. Put this stuff on your roof. There won't be a solar guy that will walk into a mayor's office or a member of council who won't say, tell me how you're going to use my product. And so demand's got to be in the picture. But we all drive cars and we don't have a lot of car jobs in Arizona. So demand alone, that's what's needed to sustain the industry, but that won't anchor the industry in Arizona. There's got to be a broader understanding of it. So, photovoltaic manufacturing, thin film manufacturing, these are big opportunities for the West Valley, all of the region, but particularly for the West Valley. Glass manufacturing, big opportunities for rural Arizona. You know, large-scale installations of glass, which is the primary substrate material in solar. Solar headquarters, but you can see everybody loves headquarters, but look how many jobs headquarters create. Fairly small output. And then electrical generation. This one on the right creates a big opportunity in Arizona for us to generate energy, become an exporter to California. But as you can see from a job standpoint, these big capital announcements don't create a lot of jobs. That's actually generous, 140 jobs. Now, they'll create a lot of construction jobs. That might be 1,500 construction jobs. But as far as permanent employment, moving us away from construction, looking for where we create that 100,000 jobs, really in the thin film sector, PV sector, and solar headquarters is going to be a space where we're going to have to be dominant to anchor an economy that moves us out of construction. Then, of course, you know, we love all jobs, like I said, I love Walmart, you know, I'm for all jobs. But building these jobs where we export technology, you know, we want photovoltaic panels on roofs in China, made in Arizona. And that's the objective going forward with this strategy. So, just curious, and be honest, because 2 years ago, well, I've been here 4 years. So 3 years ago, my technology guy came in, and I have a biotech background. And so my technology guy came in and said, you know, what we really ought to be doing is focusing on solar. Now, if you look at 3 years ago, it was, you know, 2005, maybe 4 years ago. So I pull up the solar activity and I look for a trend. And I look at 2003, I look at 2004, you know, it's in 2005, I haven't even seen that, and I go, you know, we're not going to put a solar strategy together. There's no private equity, there's no private market indication that the technology is valid. So you look at 3 and 4, and that's just, you know, 3 years ago doing the analysis. Why would we want to do that? There's no money in it. Well, you can see what happened in 6 and 7. So actually, last year, $148 billion of investment capital was put in solar and renewable. And now, of course, with the stimulus package focusing on renewables, there's actually being credit lent to this industry. So there's a tremendous infusion of capital put in this technology. And of course, when we do targets at GPEC, especially when looking for new technologies, you know, one of the things we're looking for is this technology valid. So how many of you think solar technology is valid? Raise your hand if you do. Okay, raise your hand if you don't. Is there anybody here who doesn't? Okay, good. I was going to tell you what we would have done to you in the end. I'm kidding. But because, you know, I mean, I think, you know, that's one of the questions I ask everybody. How many people still think this is kind of a kooky thing that's going to go away in 3 years when, you know, the price of oil goes down to nothing? All right, so now we know we got big momentum. And then, of course, what follows private equity investment was initial public offerings. Huge infusion of companies going public, creating tremendous wealth. And of course, one of the things that really concerns me right now, and I think this, you know, I'm not a super fan of the activities in Washington, D.C. right now, but, you know, if the credit markets were to collapse now fully on solar renewable, while this technology is going to scale, it would be a very significant setback to it. But the good news, a lot of the private equity was organized in early 2008, and then, of course, the programs that are coming out of the Department of Energy and at the state level is going to really stimulate this technology. So I would predict by 2012, right now, we're doing this fact sheet at GPEC, but about 75% of the cost of a solar installation in your home now will be offset by various federal and state programs. And so your payback period on a solar installation on your house right now is now about less than 5 years. So as far as the distributed technology goes, it's really amazing. And I'll let Dave talk about this later, Dave Bedler, but transmission capabilities from Arizona to California, I think, are forthcoming. And we're going to have the ability to build basically a solar pipeline like the Alaskan pipeline from Arizona to California and supply California with solar power. And that is the 8th largest economy in the world. It's currently the 4th largest solar market in the world. By 2012, it will be #1. So the mindset around this from a solar standpoint is, you know, we just don't want to put it on our roofs, and we just don't want to take care of ourselves. This is the industry opportunity that's going to give us a chance to break away from this very simple economic model that booms and busts on us every 10 years and has for 40 years, and avoid repeating some of the mistakes of Michigan and other people that consider this a cycle we can live with, because at some point you run out of time on the cycle. And we don't want to be sitting here 30 years from now with our kids trying to raise their family in this market and find out that this region has been built out on a simple, unreliable economic model. And when the housing starts can't churn any longer and people can't move there any longer, it cools off and goes away. That's not what I want for the future of Arizona, and we're going to fight to make sure that doesn't happen. So this is kind of the piece that we're doing right now. We're going to be #2 in the nation in large-scale solar power installation. We already know that. We'll be second only to California. And with that transmission line coming in, and House Bill 2614 passing, which reclassified the property taxes on large-scale solar installations within 5 years. Any way you measure it, I predict we'll be #1 in the nation. That's good news. I mean, the world's going to run out of energy. The ability to produce our own energy, the ability to export energy is going to be a very important, powerful tool in the future of Arizona. It could change the wealth of the state around our tax implications. It's not going to change your jobs. On the right, consuming technology. We already talked, a good year we did 500 houses. Next year we expect to do 4,500 houses in the valley. So in 1 year, we're going to have possibly a spike of solar installations on homes 9 times over just 1 year. And by 2012, being grid parity, meaning the technology's coming online where you're going to be able to pick solar because you like it. It'll actually be the same price as traditional power. 2012 is the projected date. We're going to continue to do that. But in the middle is where the economy, and that's what we're missing in Arizona, and that's part of what we have to work together on. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about taxes and budgets. You might want to write down April 9th from 9 to 11. GPAC and our 2 mayors and other mayoral leaders and 140 CEOs will be hosting kind of a discussion and overview over the extent of the state budget. And the complexity behind that is the budget deficits are larger than they can possibly close, even through cuts. And so now the discussion is how you raise taxes to level off that budget. And then when you have the discussion of raising taxes, Arizona ranks 7th out of 7th in the Mountain West already from a competitive standpoint pursuing this new industry. So there's a lot of complexities that we have to look at. So I think that it's going to be the Tempe Center for Arts, 9 to 11, April 9th. I will have the invitation out to the chamber members and our mayors are both involved with that. And I have 2 board members here, Candace Weiss and George Lord. So if you want more information, let me know. But please, if you can come to that. I think it's very important information. We're doing it without judgment. We're just informing people. But here we're sitting with the highest concentration of sun, the forefront of renewable energy. We're going to have this large-scale position. We're going to be the only accredited testing lab at ASU. We're going to have reliable power to ship to California, and we rank 7th out of 7. So what we've done with our mayors and our communities, we proposed a policy recommendation that allows the state to provide an investment tax credit on state income and reclassify real and personal property taxes that will bring us into the top 3 or 4 in the U.S. in competitiveness for this industry. And so there's very important hurdles to this. 1, the companies have to pay health care to get the investment, and 2, they have to pay 125% of the state's average wage. So, this is some of the things that we do at GPEC. We don't do a lot of this. The situation kind of dictates what we have to do sometimes from a leadership perspective, and proposing this credit is going to be really important. So 10% of the capital investment will be provided back to the company in the form of a monetized tax credit, meaning they can convert it to cash, and then 2, we'll reclassify property taxes. So what this should do for us, it's going to give us net new revenue to the state and communities. One of the reasons, incentives have been controversial in Arizona, mostly because incentives have been primarily used by local communities for retail activities. And that's been a source of frustration for the public because they don't see retail driving real jobs. What's been hard for the public to understand is that retail drives the police and fire budget for your community. And so understanding how your city pays for itself is an important part of understanding how they've constructed incentives in the past. But also going forward, without a set of competitive capabilities that allow us to compete with New Mexico and Texas. As you might know, the Secretary of Energy is a solar person, a Nobel Prize winner from physics, University of California, Berkeley professor. Now that you have a solar expert as the nation's Secretary of Energy, the idea of solar is going throughout the Mountain West. So this industry gives us a chance to be a game changer for our future. Gives us a chance to control our own destiny for energy, which many people are projecting by 35 years out, we're going to have real energy shortages throughout the United States. And so we're going to have energy for our own destiny, energy to export to California, wealth to create for our state, a chance to bring an energy online that's clean and safe, protects the environment, and then build the materials play around it on a distributed technology scale that'll create large-scale engineering, manufacturing headquarters, and research and development jobs for Arizona. And so an industry right now that's projected to create 500,000 jobs by 2016. California is projected to pick up 244,000 jobs by 2016. So the evidence that this region can shift itself over 10 years by 100,000 net new jobs in this new technology, I think is very realistic. We round that out theoretically around things like building a Southwest Center of Excellence for healthcare here, which we know we can do. Building a greater set of capabilities in information communication technology, and making ourselves a destination for international companies, and then building on that international position for trade. So that's where we get the math to come to about 200,000 new jobs over the next 15 years that will recast our economy in a more sustainable fashion, but we really feel like energy is going to be the backbone of that. So I'm going to enjoy being on the panel with my colleagues, and I want to kick it back over to Mayor Kavanaugh there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jerry. And I'd like to start, as I mentioned earlier, with a very brief and broad perspective on the leadership role which many of us have to sustain here. And then, Harry, if you take a little more specificity on that, okay? But as Mayor Goodyear, I see leadership, I'd like to delineate it into two categories. First, a practical leadership role, and secondly, a moral leadership role. In the practical leadership role, I really, and I think Mayor Rogers would probably agree with that, and she'll get an opportunity in a second. I feel like my role as a mayor is to help identify what firms do we seek to come to Goodyear. And in that identification, never delimit your target to your borders. We need to go globally and look for it. Secondly, we need to make our city accommodating to these firms. We have to empathize in a professional sense to make ourselves comfortable and desirable to them. I also feel that we have to determine to what extent do we as a city wish to incentivize. What's it worth to us? And that decision has to be made by us and our council. From a regional perspective, the subject on the horizon today is 1403. And I think as regional leaders, we have to get behind 1403 and lobby our legislators to see if we can get that bill passed this year. If we can't, we need to continually attempt to achieve that. That's important to us all. Once that passes, do we have future practical leadership requirements on a regional basis? Probably. And we'll work that with GPEC to see what we can do. From a moral perspective, moral leadership perspective, and I'm not talking right and wrong, I'm really talking about to what extent do we uplift, do we become passionate in this subject. I'm not telling you anything new if I would say that this is important to us as a nation, because we certainly do not want to bring our resources for energy from sources which are unfriendly to us, which we do today. We also don't want to pollute our environment. We're doing those things today. With renewable energy resources, we will greatly, not eliminate that, but certainly reduce it. And that needs to be our goal. And that's the more moral leadership role here. The objective is pretty obvious, I think. It's better for us. What we have to do is be passionate and uplifting and bring everyone in on this train to success in renewable energies. We can do that, and that's our moral leadership role. There is simply no reason that we aren't the Silicon Valley of renewable resources. There's no reason that we aren't the Saudi Arabia of solar. We can express that, and I think we can defend that. And that has to be our role as moral leaders, I believe, in this state. Harry, you want to be a little more specific for us?
First of all, Mayor, let me say thank you. And I appreciate your leadership on this initiative. It has really been very helpful in my role as the Economic Development Director for the City of Goodyear. If I could just turn back the clock just a little bit, back to October and September timeframe and what we were going through there at that time, and how we were all concerned, of course, about the banking crisis and the credit crisis. GTEC did a great job working with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council this last fall in getting each of the different communities to participate in the solar power conference in San Diego. And at that time, I was very concerned about all the different things that were happening and what that conference was going to be. But I was very surprised at the energy. GTEC did an excellent job. We had over 30 appointments lined up at that meeting where all the different communities had opportunities to talk to companies. It was, and I'm not kidding you, shoulder to shoulder as we would walk the aisles of that conference. And to me, that was very surprising. The things that Barry talked about things happening in the economy, those things are very evident at that show. You know, the things when we talk about our workforce and our opportunities that we have because we have a strong semiconductor workforce here in Phoenix Valley and have for some time. That's a great asset that we have. But what's evident is that we haven't had that leadership that we need, that the mayor's talked about and Barry's talked about in terms of having those programs to allow us to be competitive in the marketplace. For communities such as mine and neighboring communities, it's a rare opportunity that we have. A rare opportunity because not often do you find this kind of growth, I don't believe, in a down market, in a tough economy, and the opportunity to bring new industry to your community, one that has a large and extensive supplier network that can also bring those other jobs. So it's like an anchor for your community to bring additional jobs to your community. The leadership that we really need in the communities is definitely out there in the business community. We need a coalition of business leaders out there pushing this opportunity. And we also need a citizenship coalition. I know we've had the opportunity through the mayor, through Councilmember Lord, to work through a group in Pebble Creek, through the environmental club there at Pebble Creek. And that's a great opportunity and a great example of leadership at the local level, working with our businesses and working with citizen groups. So there's definitely a great opportunity for us out there. As a director of the community, I think I see this as one of the opportunities that we have to really provide an anchor type of industry for our communities that can benefit the surrounding communities in the entire state.
Thank you very much, Harry. We'll now move to the panel. The first question will be directed to Mayor Rogers. But before we do that, I don't think all of us know David and Soren that well here. So let me ask the panel to introduce themselves. I'll start. Barry, I'll take care of you. And Barry, of course, is the president and CEO of GTEC. And I should add that Barry and the chairman of GTEC today, Michael Bidwell, have been leaders in this particular broad renewable energy resources effort. And we thank you very much for that, Barry. David, why don't you talk about yourself?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm David Bentler. I'm here from the economic development arena, I guess. I'm on the board for Arizona Association for Economic Development, also on the board for Greater Phoenix Economic Council, also work for Arizona Public Service Company.
Thank you. I am Marie Lopez Rogers, and I'm the mayor of the city of Avondale. I've been on the council for 13 years, and have been mayor a couple of years, 3 years now. And so we'll continue this after the introductions.
Good evening. My name is Srini Puskow, and I'm the president and CEO of Eagles Consult, which is just a fancy name for a pre-project developer. It's a startup that would like to expand in the next following years. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much, Soren, and thank you everyone for joining with us this evening and sharing your thoughts. First off, let's start with Marie Lopez Rogers, Mayor Rogers. What are your thoughts about how Avondale will benefit from this industry, and what are some of the challenges in getting there?
Well, thank you, first of all, to the chambers and to GTEC and Mayor Kavanaugh. Mayors don't always agree, but on this one, I think we definitely agree upon. And I think Avondale, has been a leader in the Southwest Valley in sustainability and all things green, although I'm still trying to get used to the hybrid and driving that. But we continue to look at what our core principles are and the emphasis on the environmental stewardship. I think we've done everything from curbside recycling to wetlands facility using an all-natural process. And we're constructing a reclaimed water line from our water treatment facility to ensure removal and sustainable water. And it was so important to us that last year we formed an Environmental Affairs Commission, and I think there's a couple of members of the wave here in the audience. Thank you. And we think that they will be looking at sound environmental policies, and I think that's important for all of us to do and to look at. So we've continued to be a leader. We've been, as Mayor Kavanaugh has stated, to Washington, D.C. to talk about what's important to Arizona, and now it's time to talk at the state level. Well, how does it benefit us? Number one is jobs. I think that is going to, we have a great workforce and an untapped labor force here in the West Valley, and I think that would definitely be number one when we talk about how this will benefit from this industry. So that is number one. And certainly it would provide quality jobs in engineering, manufacturing, distribution, construction, and management. We've got a strong workforce ready to go. We've got a great location right here in the Southwest Valley. We can offer acres of open space, so we're ready to go, and I think that's the benefit that we have. Now, the challenges. I forgot you asked about challenges. Those are mountains. Currently, the local cities don't have the tools to compete for these businesses on a national level. For example, Oregon's tax incentives are working. Businesses are willing to overlook the physical climate where it rains all the time and flock to Oregon because their incentives are generous. The current makeup of our legislature doesn't lean towards tax incentives. How do we convince them that this is a permanent industry that will reap long-term benefits to the state? We're not just competing on a local, state, or national level. We're also competing in an international market. Development of a foreign trade zone is critical. We have to build on the strengths of Arizona, and they have to help us. They have to be at the table as well, and I think that right now is what the challenge is. How do we educate, convince, have the research to understand what this means to us and our communities? We need jobs for our residents. We have to change the environment of housing construction and tourism-based economy to a high-tech economy and create jobs that also cover health care. Those are important issues for our residents, and we need to make sure that they understand what this means to our residents and to their residents as well. They are also their residents, and they need to understand that. So I'm passionate about it because I'm so angry. I really, I don't understand how they don't understand that. We need to change this economy. We need to change where we've been for so long, and construction and tourism is not going to be our answer. We've got to do it another way, and this is the way right now. So.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, many of us are passionate that the state of Arizona should be a leader, a global leader in solar energy. And I've come to make that argument not too long ago, and I was countered by a gentleman, very fine reputation, by the way, who said that we have a serious limiting factor in the state of Arizona, and that limiting factor is water. David, would you address that for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess you're talking about from a solar perspective as far as... That's right.
Yeah, solar.
From the solar perspective. And obviously, everybody here knows, everybody knows that APS is building, actually Apengoa is building a solar plant, what will be the world's largest, or is at this time the world's largest solar power plant west of here, near Gila Bend, about 280 megawatts. Now, first let me just tell you, different types of technologies. There's concentrated solar technologies for power plants, and there's photovoltaic technologies. The photovoltaic solar plants don't use any water when they generate power. So from that perspective, there's no issue concern with water. But the concentrated solar do. The concentrated solar power plant works very similar to a coal power plant in a way. Or the bottom line is they all heat water. They superheat water and turn to steam, turns to turbine, and they generate electricity that way. So the concentrated solar plant does use water, similar to like a coal plant. Now, what you need to know is that the location we're putting that used to be, I believe, alfalfa field. And the water usage for this plant will be 60 to 70%. Well, actually, the water usage for the alfalfa field is at least 60 to 70% more than the solar plant that we located there. So it does use water, but certainly agricultural uses are actually larger water users than the solar plant.
Okay, thank you. Would any other panel member like to add? Okay, let me move to the next question then. Barry talked about the solar supply chain. I believe there are roles for several of Arizona's communities, urban and rural, in developing a cluster in Arizona. Where might the Southwest Valley's strengths lie? I'm going to ask several of you, but I'm going to start with Soros. Would you respond to that one, please?
Sure. I've been in Arizona since 2006. I moved out here when I graduated out of Cleveland State University, moved to Arizona. Nothing was really happening in Ohio. Moved out to Arizona, and I brought into a few people from APS, and I was amazed of the economic power that the state can generate from the point of a university being in the state so big. It's a reputable university compared to CSU. Who ever heard of Cleveland State University? Other than that, they're next to the Indians ball field out in Cleveland. And I started my company because it's a future for myself, and from the perspective of economic development, I'm a social butterfly. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and since I started my company, I have a lot of people all over the world, India, China, Germany, Spain, looking for projects in the United States. And being in Arizona, a lot of people are trying to ask me, well, what can we do in Arizona? And I point them to the right direction to various incentives for the state, and they're saying thanks, but no thanks. And that's why I'm here today, to kind of push that so we can get that boost in economic development in the state, because there's a lot of interest. We have a lot of sun, just for the solar usage of it, but also a lot of people want to come to Arizona because of the closeness to the California solar market and Silicon Valley and all the financial power. And that's what I've been observing, and that's where I want to go with my firm in the future.
Okay, thank you. Barry? Would you add to that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, there's a lot of things in the Southwest Valley that really work. And so if you're thinking about the deliverable of reliable two-year technical talent, you have the community college system that's very strong in the West Valley and the Southwest Valley that is going to consistently churn out that talent. I mean, I don't know what our latest number is. I'm usually great at numbers. But I know we're between 275,000 and 290,000 community college students in the Valley. So the deliverable, that two-year talent, is going to be a real strength of the Southwest Valley. Also, one of the most important things that really need to be continued to work on in Arizona is the Southwest Valley is very young. It's a very young market, and of course, the real targeted workforce for this industry is 18 to 35. That makes all of us too old, doesn't it? But the industry really targets an age group because they're looking for workers they can train and change consumer habits at the same time. And of course, one of the other real boosts, 68% of the growth in the region is going to occur in the West Valley, and the anchoring heart of that, the Southwest Valley. So a big part of this technology is going to have to be integrated in new construction. So when at the planning and development level for new construction, so the Valley is offering the deliverable, the talent, they're offering the right age, but they're also offering the customer base to the industry. And I think a other really key component, and I really want to thank Mayor Lopez Rogers and Mayor Kavanaugh. There is an era of collaboration and cooperation, in the Southwest Valley. These companies, a lot of our companies that we're working on in this market are coming out of Europe. And this is a big target for German and Spanish and, believe it or not, Dutch solar companies. The European markets have been deep in solar for 10, 12 years. And the German markets were one of the innovators in the technology. I always said when everyone else was doing nuclear, the world suggested that Germany try solar. And that was back in the 70s. So we still had, some memories over there. I wasn't real excited about Germany and nuclear power just yet. So the Germans have been really an early adopter in solar, and they are aggressively looking at the California market as a place to service, and they look at the Southwest Valley as a great location for it. And then, that ability to collaborate and interface is really important to international companies. Another key piece that is also very important, is this like, who's doing that? I'm doing that telepathically. I just, And then I wanted to show you that slide. Okay, forget it. Okay. A lot of people didn't know I could do that. I don't know what I am. That's like, if I lift my foot, if it does it again, then I'll know. But then I think the last piece that's really important is, the Southwest Valley is connected physically to the metro market enough to where they can demonstrate that and this is where regionalism is so important. When someone comes in and looks at the Southwest Valley, they're going to draw a fairly big circle around it. It's probably going to encompass most of the city of Phoenix as well, and go well over to the 101. And this market has the ability to land 100, 150 acre, 200 acre sites. So these are huge investments. I mean, we've had companies looking at Goodyear, Avondale, and Surprise that were, first phase $750 million projects. And Abengoa is a $1.4 billion project. So the scalability of the physical dimensions of the industry fit very well in the Southwest Valley.
Okay, thank you. David, would you like to? Okay, Harry or Rogers?
Well, the only thing I'd like to add to that is when you talk about competitive, and we talked about cities competing against each other for retail, this is one that benefits all of us, and so we're using as a state and not just from city to city, and I think that's critical for us to know that, because not only will it help us locally, but it helps the rural areas, it helps all of Arizona, as opposed to just trying to get it from one city or another. We're really competing state to state.
Okay. Good? Okay, thank you very much. Barry, let's get back to the point you made. You talked about, I believe, Northern Europe, a little bit on solar. Today, leaders in solar energy manufacturing are Northern Europe, Spain, Japan. Can we identify a unifying factor, whether it's government involvement, leadership, management, environment? Is there a unifying factor that produced success in solar manufacturing for those particular areas?
They balanced the deliverable on technical talent and demand. In order to get this technology off the ground, the German government basically underwrote the demand in the market to get clean technology out. Some markets too, one of the other unifying factors in a place like Japan, the incredible price of electrical power in Japan, it is staggering. So when solar got to 20 cents a kilowatt, which would mean, more than double what you'd ever see out of APS, it was now price competitive in Japan. So once it got to 20, 21 cents a kilowatt in Japan, Japanese people could choose a cleaner technology over a traditional technology. So we have to bring pricing in line so that demand will go up, and then combine that with the deliverable, the technical talents, in order to build a cluster. And when you can do those two things together, that's when you're going to have the dynamic. And the way that you build the investment capital for companies is you have to reduce the cost of capital. And this is really important that we start establishing in the mindset of public policy in Arizona. You know, when you come here and run a company, when you'll hear people say this is a great place for people to do business. And it is. And immediately start thinking about the operating environment. So, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance. I can go to Mayor Kavanaugh or Mayor Rogers and I get help for both. You know, I've got cities that collaborate. It's not a state whose public policy has been driven by trial lawyers. And so product liability is reasonable. And so these are all wonderful factors. You can get talent. Talent's affordable. But then you look at the tax rate on capital. Our tax rate on capital investment in Arizona is more than double California. So now here comes this company that's enticed to come here because it's sunny. They're enticed to come here because, you know, people love solar in Arizona, so there's going to be an appetite for demand. They've heard about our community colleges. They know to follow the semiconductor markets because, you know, the Intel and Motorola guys are running this industry. Ex-Intel guys run the solar company. Plain and simple. That's almost an absolute statement. And then they come into this market and find out, you know, if I'm going to put $750 million in capital in Goodyear or Surprise or Avondale, my tax rate over California is going to be more than double. On a $100 million investment, the difference between the cost of taxes in California and Arizona on that $100 million is about $19 million a year. Whoa. Okay? So you come in here and the Germans are really good at this, by the way, and you go do your long-range planning, and all of a sudden, you know, the land of the sun over 10 years on a $100 million investment is actually much more expensive than California. And then, of course, in California, you have the invention of the technology and the huge consumer demand because California, like Japan, has extraordinarily high electrical prices. Dave's done a good job of getting us cheap electrical prices. So solar has to become productive to compete with Dave. In California, solar already has its best friend, you know, out of control regulations. So power costs are too high in California. So, you know, we have this hurdle over the capital question for these companies that we have to overcome. And Mayor Rogers and Mayor Kavanaugh has been working with us. Of course, if Senate Bill 1403 occurs, and we eliminate the taxes on that capital for 10 years, or bring it down to 5%, what happens? Arizona is now less expensive than California on the cost of capital. So the return on the capital investment goes up. And now we get into the discussion of an operating environment. And the operating environment in Arizona is dramatically better than California. And so now they can choose Arizona over California, choose Arizona over New Mexico, choose Arizona over Texas, over Oregon, because we've eliminated in a strategic economic development strategy the cost of capital in Arizona, which is the highest in the Mountain West region, overwhelmingly. Overwhelmingly.
Okay, thank you. Further comments on that?
I would just say that it is interesting. Barry, GPEC is bringing in people from Germany all the time, China, Japan, Spain, and as well as our company. They're coming to talk to us all the time. And all these folks from globally, all over the world, are coming to Arizona because they know this is the place to be. And it is kind of interesting. On many occasions, I'll sit across from a gentleman from Germany, and he says, "You know what your problem is? Your electricity rates are too low." You know, I rarely hear that, so I get all excited about that. But when it comes to, so obviously we provide an incentive for residential, for businesses to put solar panels on their houses, and the federal government provides an incentive, and the state provides an incentive, and I think by the time all is said and done, about a third of it is paid for through incentives, and the rest of you, maybe even a little bit more than that, the rest of it you would be paid. So we are trying to provide some incentives to help make that happen. That's all I would say.
One of the things I wanted to mention tonight was several months ago we had the opportunity to work with a company that's considering Arizona. And that has slowed some significantly because really the ball's in our court and we have to pass a program like Senate Bill 1403. You know, we talk a lot about Oregon and what Oregon's done. We compared looking at standard occupational classifications, especially in the semiconductor industry, comparing Oregon and comparing Arizona. In 9 out of 11 of those categories, Arizona was more efficient in operating and the cost was lower. In almost everything that we look at in terms of opportunities for this industry, other than the fact that we don't have a program, we compete very well. And it makes it difficult. One of the biggest fears that I have is, I remember years ago when I was in New Mexico and worked in New Mexico, and all the time New Mexico would lament, and very few people know the story about Microsoft. Bill Gates actually started in New Mexico. New Mexico didn't have the vision to see what he was doing, didn't step up to the plate and take advantage of that opportunity to work with that company. And of course, all the operations went to Seattle initially and then different places in the world. I don't think there's anything in New Mexico now. I know in the time when I was there in the 90s, there wasn't. Today, here in our market, a lot of that intellectual knowledge that Barry was talking about is here. And what we could be facing is that those ideas, those PhDs that have those concepts and develop that technology could be taking that technology to other states, and then we lose out on those jobs and those opportunities. Those are some of the things that we're faced with. The technology, a lot of it, and I'm amazed, is here. And a lot of that growth in that technology. So not only do we have the opportunity to bring companies here, but also the opportunity to probably grow companies from within, which is I think a great opportunity, one we can't pass up.
Yeah, Harry brought up a really important point, and while I think we go into California calling all the solar companies, and we walk in and start talking about Arizona, and better than 50, and this is what the CEO and the CFOs, better than 50% of the time, that goes, I lived in Arizona from 1985 to 98, worked for Intel. I mean, almost every single time. Or what happens a lot of time is, I live in Chandler and I fly out every morning out of Sky Harbor and come here and go to work. You cannot believe how many CEOs there are in our community that are flying to New Mexico, California, and Germany to run companies. I know over a dozen right now in this community. In fact, one of the most exciting companies that's coming up in California, the chief financial officer lives in Surprise. And so, we're sitting here with everything we need, but a couple of smart policy strategies. The Arizona Corporation Commission, very controversial, but has done some fantastic things to create this environment for Arizona. We're the most naturally advantaged economy in the United States for this technology. We probably have the best set of public policy occurring right now in the nation on the regulatory side by the Arizona Corporation Commission, including transmission line capabilities. And we just need a little bit of help to make the magic occur in Arizona.
Okay, thank you. Sorry?
A lot of my contacts, when they contact me, they refer back to the Department of Energy. They have done research on solar power throughout the United States, and of course Arizona is in the solar corridor, but it has the highest concentration of solar power among the southern states. And without even knowing if there's anything going on in Arizona, most people that want to invest in solar companies in the United States, they'll go to the Department of Energy's website and they'll pull out their maps. And Arizona is like hot red in the middle, and they'll pick up the phone and contact anybody that's in the area. But again, this legislation will probably help attract. Imagine the contacts we're going to be getting and the jobs that we can be creating in this region if the bill passes. And it's a first small step, but I think it's a great step because we're getting a lot of attention without having anything in place right now. So that's one I want to add.
Thank you. Harry, why don't you keep it? Our unemployment rate was 7.5 in February. We need to put Arizonans back to work. How does the current workforce and its skill sets fit into this industry?
That's one of the best things about it is the semiconductor industry that Arizona's been so strong and has had here for a significant amount of time. It still has huge investment. But I think Barry, you mentioned numbers that where it was down to about 30,000 or so now, and it continues to decline. Those skill sets are here, that intellectual knowledge is here. As I mentioned earlier, we compete very well in terms of cost. Those individuals able to transfer over to this industry, it seems like it's almost tailor-made in many cases, especially on the photovoltaic side. So that skill set is here, those engineers are here, the technical side is here. As Barry has mentioned earlier, with the Maricopa Community College, the largest community college system in the country. A few years ago, Expansion Management Magazine, which is a magazine that many site selectors use when they're looking at different opportunities, and they have interviewed over 80, I believe, site selectors. Arizona ranked in the top 10 of workforce systems for training people. So whether we're talking about the pipeline to train the workforce, that is in place with our community college system and can adapt also to the needs that the industry may have, or we're talking about the existing workforce that exists here, that's here as well. But as more and more states, as New Mexico, as Texas, as Oregon is more and more successful, obviously those jobs, that talent, as Barry was talking about, is going to go to those other states, and then we lose out on that opportunity. So we have those assets in place. We also have the assets at ASU, which is very exciting for us because we have the only certifying photovoltaic lab in the country in ASU. So there's another asset that we have that is great for us. And so we have the pipeline through our schools. We have the existing labor force here now, and we have that intellectual knowledge, but we don't have a program such as Senate Bill 1403 to make us competitive.
Very nicely done. Further comments? Soren?
In terms of competitiveness in this metro area, especially in the West Valley, a lot of the developers, when they look over to expand their markets, they look at the maps, and as we hate our transportation system because it's crammed, they look at it differently. We got the I-10 and the 8 going to Mexico, and we're really close to California, and we also have the rail lines that are really, really, turning on the lights of those logistics managers of those companies, and that's one of the things that they look at too. And I just want to say that's one of our greatest assets also.
Would you like to use the microphone? Soren, talk about how your company would benefit from the solar energy industry.
Well, it's, my company's a startup, and as you may my last name is not Rockefeller or Trump. Those incentives would actually help me grow my company. And it's the reality, but from a startup company, it's as I grow my company, these incentives will help me create more jobs in the valley. And I've been on the other side of the door, and I know what it means for especially the health benefits. It's something that I really look forward to.
Okay, thank you. David, let's go to you here. Good. The Arizona Corporate Commission has a mandate requiring 15% of electricity from Arizona's public utilities come from renewable sources by 2025. 15% of electricity from renewable sources by 2025. David, talk about that standard and how the Southwest Valley will be there.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. APS is very confident that we'll be able to meet those standards. The Arizona Corporation Commission, we're working with them, obviously, together to do this. We are now at 2%, and that may sound small, but we're ahead of schedule, actually. It's about 150 megawatts now, and we currently do that through many different types of renewable resources. We have a partnership in a biomass plant up in Snowflake. We have a wind plant in New Mexico, about 100 megawatts there. We have all the solar activities that are taking place right now. So that's gotten us to 150 megawatts. There's also some thermal opportunities that we have, one in California. So we look at all the different resources, and actually it comes down to economics, obviously. We look for the best deal. Now the big deal, so Solana, 280 megawatts west of here. That hasn't happened yet. I mean, we haven't started building it yet, but it's all in the planning stages, and it's on schedule. It's moving along. Then we also have another deal with another wind plant, which will be another 100 megawatts. So by 2012, we'll be at 6%, which is ahead of schedule again. So we need to get to 15%, and we feel very confident we will, but that just means that there will be more opportunities down the road. We do that through sending out RFPs to all the companies, and everybody watches us throughout the world. Germany, China, all those folks are all watching RFPs to see what they should respond to next. And we'll keep sending those out until we get to the 15%, that's for sure. So we feel very confident we'll make it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let me ask one more question before, did you want to comment? Okay, let me ask a question each all of you to respond to very quickly because I've been asked to move the audience here. But succinctly, how do consumers benefit from the adoption of this industry in our particular locale? Can you do that?
Well, you make a one-time capital investment to have permanent energy in your home. And of course, you get clean energy. And then you get to stimulate a new industry that is perfect for your state from an employment standpoint.
All of that, and just everybody benefits just from jobs. The potential of jobs in this community, I think, is just a big opportunity. So it's a simple answer besides Barry's answer.
Exactly, I think jobs and then with the healthcare coverage is crucial. And certainly this program would impact the revenue positive to the state budget. So that's crucial right now as well.
I would have to ditto everything that's been said about those benefits. The thing that I keep thinking about in my mind in many cases personally is I'd like to see David's meter turn the opposite direction. On my home, personally, I'd love to have that opportunity to see that happen. Not that I don't want to help ATS, but that would be great to be able to do that. You know, definitely professionally, the opportunities that I think this industry provides us are rare. I'm honest when I say that. I think they are rare. The growth that's here, the expected growth that will come in this industry, but I know this, they don't last forever. You know, those decisions will be made this year, maybe next year, for the most part, and then there will be probably a lot of those location decisions will be made, and they'll stay in an area for some time. And then, of course, there'll be a kind of a settling of the industry. Barry's more of an expert on this than I am. There'll be somewhat of a settling of the industry, and some technologies will be very successful. So we need to work to get as many as we can for the fact that we want to create all those jobs, but also to make sure that we have a good opportunity for those technologies and companies that are real successful. We have a good opportunity for those being in Arizona, staying in Arizona, and prospering.
I don't know if you guys remember Thomas Edison. Back in the 1900s, he actually recognized the power of the sun, and he said, it's one of my favorite quotes, is that, he said, I hope that we're not going to wait until we run out of oil and coal and start using solar energy. So imagine where we'd be today if we would have started looking at solar energy back in the 1900s. And in terms of benefits, I mean, I want my children's children to breathe some fresh air, and I think we should be smarter than dinosaurs in terms of, if you believe the dinosaurs, whatever, however you want to take it, extinction. But as human species, we can create jobs for our future generations, and at the same time, why not use the power of the sun?
Okay, thank you. 1 second, and then we'll go on. First off, I want to make sure before we ask for your input, are there any questions on 1403? You feel comfortable with that subject? You needed more information? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, I mean, you talk about common sense reasons why we should move in this direction, but what are the powerful forces that are preventing it from moving forward? Oftentimes it's a lobby, it's big money that's funding somewhere. Do we have that?
Is that an issue here in Arizona?
Are you talking about the legislation?
Yeah, the actual legislation. Why hasn't it fast-tracked so that we can get moving forward in this industry?
Barry, you want to try that one?
Sure.
Good question.
Yeah. Try and see if I can do this. Yeah. I need my job. It's a very bad economy. Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think that there's a preconceived notion on what an incentive is. And one of the discussions that I have with all of my legislators, I always say to them, if I read Arizona's state incentive strategy, I wouldn't like it either. You know, we've never really thoughtfully built a strategy around state economic development policy. State economic development policy with regard to incentives that are on the book in Arizona are very poorly done. They incentivize low-wage jobs without health care. They're incentives that do not leverage larger capital investments, and they're not helping us. And because of that, when you say I have a Senate Bill 1403 that's going to set up a state strategy around solar using an incentive on a monetized income tax credit, they blink out on you. And so getting them to be more open-minded and understand what good incentives are, health care, 125% wages. And by the way, this incentive gets released once the company is fully built and operational. The company has to operate in Arizona for 10 years, or they pay every incentive back plus a penalty to the state. And that's secured by the asset. That's how you write an incentive. Something that creates new jobs, creates new opportunities, and then holds the company accountable to produce for the incentive. Our current incentives in Arizona don't do that. So I think a lot of our problem has been when you say incentives to a guy that's been down there a while, all he's seen is, or all she has seen has been bad public policy. So that's my most altruistic statement about why this bill hasn't moved more quickly.
I would also say that in the past, I guess, I think we were a little spoiled. Arizona, we were busy and we were landing a lot of projects and we really didn't have to work too hard for it. And I think what happened is other states got hungry. You know, Michigan and wow, they have a lot of berries from Michigan. Some of the states that are really having tough times, well, we're having tough times now too, but they really got aggressive. You know, Oregon, surprisingly, and New Mexico, our neighbors. We never lost anything to New Mexico. You know, Barry showed you we lost SHOT to New Mexico, and that really shouldn't have happened. I mean, when you think about it, SHOT actually manufactures receivers that, I don't think the contract's let out yet, but it could be used for the Solana power plant in Gila Bend. They should be in Arizona. But New Mexico was hungrier than Arizona at that time. They have incentives and we just didn't have any to throw at them. That's why we lost them.
If I can be as simple as, we have a lot of rural legislators that see incentives in the metropolitan Phoenix area as we got, they didn't. And whether it's retail sales or you know, the big boxes, they don't get them. And so some of that comes actually from rural Arizona. They need to understand what that means to them as well. And so putting it plain and simple, I mean, it's really, they don't see, and you're right, incentives are a bad word down there. And so, you know, which we could find another word to use, but that's it.
They're not visionary.
I know Barry tried for many years and is still working on it to make the case that, hey, times are good in Arizona, we're growing fast, but then where is the growth really centered on? And I think what he showed tonight really highlights the fact that we are very dependent on the construction industry. And that's great that we have those good times, we want those good jobs we talked about, but it also highlights some challenges that we have. And so when you have that success, and Arizona's had that success for a long time as an economic developer, yeah, you know, it's great because we were always in the top 5 for a long time in job growth. Now we're not. In fact, I think Barry shared a statistic at a recent meeting I was at with him where last quarter we were even worse than Detroit, Phoenix Valley. And that's shocking. That's how much it's changed. And so hopefully we will see these challenges that we are faced with and see that we have to have a more we have to be more strategic about our economic development. Hopefully some of these things highlight that. If there's a silver lining in all the challenges we're going through, hopefully it's that.
And I think a lot of it is just misunderstanding, and it takes an open mind to accept these particular incentives in the bill, and they have to be explained to some people twice before they understand it. That was my experience.
Yeah, as Harry was saying, fourth quarter 2004, Detroit outperformed City of Phoenix on jobs. So, so what may be happening now is there could be an awakening on thinking better about Arizona economic policy. The other thing too, and is I've been president of GPAC for 4 years. GPAC was formed in 1987, became operational in 1989. I'm the third president in 22 years. The two previous presidents left this job considered one of the top 2 or 3 economic developers in the country. I think that's a fair statement, David. Would you agree with me? My predecessor, Rick Weil, is the president of Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, so that's a pretty high compliment to Rick and the organization. I've had 5 state economic development directors since I've been here, and they all won the award for putting the most yard signs up for the governor. That's true. I don't know if that's really the truth, but they weren't there because they were qualified. They were there because they were politically connected. And that was probably, I should have said that, isn't it? Is that thing recorded?
Next question.
But you go back to the legislature, how do you get policymakers to believe you can write good economic policy? You gotta convince them to get rid of the economic policy that they rightfully have disdain for, which is on the books. That's poorly written. And you gotta give them a state agency and professionals to turn to. One of the good things that these mayors all have, professional city managers who hire professional economic development people. So the mayors, as policymakers, get recommendations from credentialed professional people. But if the state economic development director turns over every 12 to 18 months, it is largely there because they have a relationship with the governor. There's certainly, there were some people in there that had ability. I was just kind of jazzing the room up a little bit before I realized I had a camera on me, and then I stopped jazzing quickly. But they weren't professional economic development people. They could not advise the governor or the legislature on economic policy, and so you got the combined factor of poor economic policy, poor economic development leadership, and then the whole subject matter just sours to the legislators.
Okay, we need to roll here. Sir, you had your arm up first. Let me get to you.
Yeah, my name is Tom Kachimba. I'm High Performance Building Technology Team. I'm doing a number of projects. There's one up in Golden Valley of 100 megawatts, another one northwest of Kingman about 300 megawatts. And then I'm also working with a community college and a local school system in the city using the solar investment tax credit and solar service agreements to build solar units on their rooftops at no cost to those units of government. Through the use of investors. But the key thing to locating manufacturers of solar equipment here, the average job pays $56,000 a year, as well as advanced battery manufacturers, is to create demand. And I believe California and Colorado and about 6 other states, and Secretary Chow has spoken about this, have developed, which I think would allow everybody in this room to put solar panels on their roofs. And what they're doing is they try to create jobs by putting solar panels on roofs, and what they found out was that after incentives and rebates and all that, the average homeowner was going to have to come up with $12,000 to $15,000, which at 7 to 12% interest, if they could get the capital, they couldn't get there because of all kinds of things. So what these communities are doing is they're using what would be the equivalent here of the community facilities bond, that needs to be tweaked. There's legislation going on to do that now. They borrowed money at 3%. Now 15% amortized over 20 years is $56 a month, and the city added another $50 on that to make sure that they didn't lose any money. And the city had a lien against that residential building for 20 years. It was an opt-in program only. And at $100 a month, most of these homes are going to cut their energy bill by half to 2/3, giving them a positive cash flow. And in one community in California, they oversubscribed to this program in 9 minutes. Now, in the legislature, there is a bill working its way through, and it was proposed by a Republican, and all other co-sponsors were Republicans, to change the community facilities bonding to do this type of program to include solarization as well as weatherization. And if they can do that, and the issue is the votes are there in both the House and Senate, the issue is getting a vote. Then we would create the kind of demand in the West Valley, and it's demand that's going to bring solar manufacturers here and advanced battery manufacturers, not anything else really. Although this bill is important legislation to be sitting in the books, So it's that kind of demand, and this is the way to increase that demand. And this bill is going to take the support of cities and towns to get it through. We have maybe 2-3 weeks left. And in the Senate, it looks like they only want to deal with the budget and go home. Well, if they do that and don't deal with the hundreds of millions in solar investment here, Arizona won't get any of that money, because that money has to be spent by September of 2010. So if the legislature goes home now, they'll get back to it by maybe next May. Then it'll take the bureaucracy another 3-4 months to gear up. The problem is the money has to be spent, not allocated, not promised, none of that kind of stuff. And so we're in danger of losing all of that economic incentives coming from the federal government. But the key piece of legislation is House Bill 2335. And that's really critical for cities and towns, because if you create jobs, then you create tax revenues for the cities and towns. If somebody screws in a fluorescent light bulb or puts on a solar panel, they have more disposable income. That creates disposable income for the small business community, goods and services. So I think the key is not up here, I think the key is down here to create the demand. And I would hope that this organization go forward. And if any city and town has pools they want to be heated with solar, we just did a major proposal up at the Kiva Club at Trilogy of Wisconsin. They have a 1-year return on investment. It's one of the best investments you can make right now. So enough.
That's very enlightening. Now let me, first off, I'd like to introduce, we just had a distinguished visitor in our room here, and it's the President of the State Senate, Arizona, Senator Robert Burns. Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you. I thought I might speak to the issue of the Senate doing the budget and then going home. That is not the game plan. The game plan is to do the budget first, however, and then we will go into a regular schedule of hearing bills. So it's not the plan, at least not my plan, to do the budget and go home.
Thank you, and welcome. Okay, now, we gotta be succinct. We're running out of time. Okay, go.
Hi, just sort of. And Mayor Fund to figure out how to do that, right? You shut them down. Obviously, you shouldn't be taking a lot of technology.
There you go.
The only thing on the demand issue, the California energy prices on traditional power are so high, they're in some cases double this market, that solar is already almost on its own at price parity. So the opportunity in Arizona isn't how do we create solar technology for 6 million people and stick it on their roofs. It's how do we sell a lot of solar technology to 20 to 40 million people in California and stick it on their roofs and create new income and jobs. That's how you're going to create a scalable enterprise model in Arizona. We want to sell our technology to Japan, Germany, California, not just put it on our own roofs. So if we don't build the engineering and manufacturing capabilities here, we're not going to be able to go scalable around the world.
Questions?
Yes, I have a quick comment and then a quick question. First of all, the comment is that most of the technology for solar is very clean. It's made out of silicon or sand. But there are technologies out there that use toxic materials, and I would just caution you when you're recruiting these companies, be careful about the ones that use toxic materials and find out what they're going to do with those materials to protect the people. The other question I have is that as one member of the audience, I'm very well convinced that we need to all support Bill 1403, and I would hope that we're now ready to hear what you want us to do to give that support.
Okay.
Well, certainly we've had conversations with our legislation. I think that's the key right now for communities is to make sure that you're talking to your legislators, call them, write them, bombard them, sorry, President. Let them know how important this is to your community. That's really, we need to have that dialogue, and we need to support that measure, and that's how you do it.
You know, I appreciate you, Drew, for speaking. We had an opportunity a couple of weeks ago to speak to the Environmental Club. If that can take place at Pebble Creek, if that can take place in every community, something like that, and then also Business Coalition and Citizen Coalitions build, and then those organizations contact our legislature and explain why they think it's important, that will help, I think, tremendously. Building a citizen and a business coalition will help us.
We have a question over here.
Just one more answer on that question, because that's a great question. How do we make this happen, right? And GPEC, I think, has been working this in a coordinated and structured way. So, Barry, would you respond?
Yeah, you can contact our office. We have really simple, clean one-pagers on this initiative so that you can understand it. And by the way, your legislators, you know, they're not going to grill you like you're an expert. They're going to be interested in hearing about you from a concerned citizen. But one of the things I think is really important to us at GPEC, and I'm so pleased to see Senator Burns here, you know, we have to work in tandem with our legislators to make Arizona better. So make sure that we keep our advocacy on an outreach, educational tone and a positive tone. I know there's some frustration when things not going good, but our legislators are working hard to try and solve very complicated problems. So gpec.org, you can come to the President's box, say, Barry, please send me the information packet. I want to write a handwritten note. We got some handouts out here before you go, and make it a positive experience, because you know our legislators are nothing more than highly inspired citizens that serve in the democracy, just like our mayors and our city council members.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Hi, I'm Bill Connors from SunTrek Solar, and I'd just like to ask the gentleman from APS, I can see you finally from back here, why are so many of your projects, like the Solana, for instance, being developed and constructed by companies that are not even from Arizona, they're not even from the U.S., like Abengoa and Iberdrola?
Abengoa.
Abengoa. Yeah,
Abengoa.
Iberdrola is the wind farm.
Yeah. We're looking for the best deals, actually. We put the RFPs out, and those are open for everybody in the world to respond to. And obviously, we have an obligation to keep our rates low. So we're looking for the best deals, and they actually came up with the best proposal for us on that one. We know that when they build the plant, that there's going to be a lot of local folks involved in that, obviously. Any further questions? Yes, sir.
I have 2 points. One directed to Mr. David, who is the ABS, and the other one is, of course, the cities. It is basically generating demand. One in-house, that is within Arizona State, and the second one is if we are looking for any demand outside that we can meet in Arizona State, that where APS can come as a big help. Firstly, within the state, the cities can definitely solicit various companies and investors who are interested in setting up the solar system, solar panels on common areas, the schools, the libraries, any parks or sports areas, where they can just lease out the space to the investors or to the companies, and then the power will be generated from the solar panels, and the cities then can purchase power at the same rate as they are purchasing from the APS. This will create a far larger volume of demand within the state, and thereby creating lots of jobs. And my next point is about the creating demand outside Arizona. If we know that California rates are much higher and we can meet their demand from exporting power from Arizona, why not encourage installation of various solar farms in far too much of land which is available here in Arizona, and then APS can come with the tremendous help by transmission of this power to California at much higher rates. Is APS at this time geared for taking on this loaded transmission to California or no?
Well, yeah, the transmission is what's lacking right now. Obviously, we support solar farms in Arizona, but that has been the problem. There's a lot of them looking for land out here, and then they go, but how are we going to transport it? And the transmission lines just aren't out there as many as we'd like to have out there. So, and that's a very expensive proposition. These are big 500 kV lines. These are billions of dollars, quite frankly, to give to California, and we could not do that alone. But that would be a group, a consortium of utilities that would need to do that. So yeah, all that's being talked about.
Mayor Rogers?
Certainly in cities, we're all doing our best to make sure that we're inclusive in when we go out for projects. And that is really why we put the Environmental Commission together, so that we have residents and professionals that are looking at the policies so that we can look at the demand and create the demand, and then have those companies come into our city. So I'm sure that Goodyear is doing the same thing, and certainly that's a viable question. I appreciate that, because that's what it takes. As Mayor Kavanaugh said, you know, we have to lead in that respect, because it's just not going to just happen. So thank you for the question.
Yes, sir. I think in the orange, and then we'll go to you, sir, in the front.
I'm Glenn, young Glenn from Energy Master Solar. I want to know, are there any programs to help take the red tape out of going green? And it seems like there's no coalition between the cities about permitting and processing. And is there anything being done in the legislature to fix those kind of things?
Great question. Anybody want to answer that one?
There's actually a bill which GPEC has not opposed or supported, that would fix permit fees at about $375 on home installations. I'm looking at Michelle, who's my external person, to give me the hang news number if that's not right, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. But I will say this, historically, you know, and we found our cities to be very efficient. And I think having the cities think about a deliverable on the permitting side for solar and renewables is probably a good idea, and something that Harry and his colleagues have probably already given some thought to.
It's a very good question. One of the things that the city just did, you know, with the leadership of the mayor and the council, was establish a flat fee, which is a pilot program of $35 actually for this year, because we did an analysis over the last several months. Harvey, I know from our community development directors back there, and his shop led that analysis. And you know, those analyses, yeah, we're looking at some of them several $100s, some of them exceeded over $500, I know. So a flat fee is one way in which we're definitely approaching that on the permit side. Also, with the leadership of our mayor and our council and the city center project that we have proposed, I think this kind of addresses one of the concerns and things that you were talking about in comments. We do understand that it needs to be something that the communities are leading to. And so our new city center that is under design now will have a LEED certification. So that's one of the issues also that we face as we talk with companies, and as companies come here. I know Barry's had this comment to him too before, and working with some of his staff, as they come here and they say, where's the evidence of the solar industry or the other sustainable industries? So you're right, and a lot of those comments have been made earlier. We've got to be leading, and we're definitely working towards that. And I think there's definitely a lot more that we have to do, but we're definitely working in that direction.
Okay, one last question, I'm told. Sir, would you please ask that, or make a point, whatever you'd like.
I'm with Workforce Development for Maricopa, and one of the things that from our side, what we see or hear just from job seekers is, you know, I'm interested in getting into this industry, and they have the transferable skills to do so. And I think from what we're hearing that MCC has the only programs now. What else is in development in terms of training and getting people the skills to get the jobs in renewable energy?
Very good.
There's a couple of things. You know, first off, you know, we met with, you know, and I love, as I said, I love the community colleges. They're the best public value for education out there on the face of the earth. So we worked with Maricopa Community College and condensed what would be like a 2-year technical program into a 6-month deliverable. It's not an associate's degree, but it's a certification. So for as these companies go to scale, they go fast, they're going to need a lot of people in a hurry. Being able to deliver some type of qualified measurement in a 6-month interval is going to be really important. The other key thing that is happening right now, we're working with Maricopa County on this, is to identify kind of green workforce training funds through this federal stimulus package and actually bring those in through Workforce Connections that will deliver the kind of training. You know, our 6-month certification training is going to be a lot more about engineering and technical development inside these large scalable enterprises. This federally stimulated program through Maricopa County is going to be more about helping people convert on the construction side from traditional construction talent to kind of green techniques and talent. And I think, you know, we do a nice job at workforce delivery. It's really a big strength of ours in the market, and I think we'll do well.
Okay, I'm told there's one more question or point you'd like to make.
Actually, a little of both. My name is Todd Lamprey. I work for the Renewable Energy Contracting Group of Ironco. We actually build solar plants. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you probably will go home tonight and watch the news and see the big ASU solar parking garage. We're the company that actually built that. So we have a vested interest clearly in seeing renewable energy projects spread out throughout the state. I guess the comment would be, right now, as we see it, Arizona pretty much imports all of its energy, or the fuel to generate its energy. The oil we get from out of state, the natural gas we get from out of state, the uranium we get from out of state, we get some of it from here. Coal we get from out of state. But if we invest in renewable energy, and I guess a suggestion I would make to folks, and part of my job is dealing with members of the legislature. I haven't gotten to the Senate yet, but I will. One of the things that we try to express to the members of the legislature when we talk to them is, one of the complaints we hear is that everything's talking about solar, 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 solar. And government should not be in the position of picking winners or losers. And a lot of people, I think, perceive that the overall focus on solar is asking the state to pick a winner. What we like to tell people is that, you know, with these tax credits, with the incentives, anything else, it's not really that the state would be the people that are picking the winners or losers. It would be the market that's picking the winners and losers. Because clearly APS, it has looked at, and you know, my company was involved in their distributed energy study that was just finished by back in September. I think it was sent to the ACC. They're only going to pick, and SRP and the co-op utilities, they're going to pick the energies that make the most sense for them. And so I think my suggestion would be, as you go across the state or maybe talk to the legislators, what seems to resonate with them when we talk to them is that it's an overall renewable energy program. Because, you know, there's a lot of biomass that could be built in this state. There's a lot of biogas, a lot of landfill. There's projects throughout the state that are already kind of going that way. So that's my soapbox. But the question I've got is, I guess, really directed to Barry. For those of us who are really kind of trying to pull the war in the same direction as the GPAC, and I recognize that President Burns is here, but who specifically should we be talking to? I mean, who are the people in the committees? What committees should the people in this room be talking to in order to push this ball forward? I mean, it's, you know, there's representatives in my district that have nothing to, they're not going to sit on any committees that are going to hear this stuff. So what advice can you give us into who we need to talk to, both on the House and Senate side, which committees, which members, that really can effectively push this message forward?
Well, the bill is being introduced by Senator Barbara Leff. And so members of the Commerce Committee, which we've already met with at GPAC, have been pretty favorable towards it. And so having the bill assigned to the Senate Commerce Committee for hearing, which I think Senator Burns, I'm an economic development guy, everything I've learned from lobbying, I've learned in the last 12 to 18 months, painfully, I might add. But, you know, we'll hear that. And then I think really, what I think is really important is if you can connect up in the GPAC is, you know, talk to your own legislators. And go on your, you know, Arizona legislative website, and if you don't know who your state rep is and your state senator, it'd be a good kind to know it. And I will tell you, a handwritten note to the legislator that I was in a West Valley event, and I heard about this bill, and I think it's important, and I would please ask your consideration for it. And if you have any questions, you know, I understand GPEC has most of the information available to you. That's very powerful. And I know legislators love to hear from their constituents. And so I think that's really important. And then if you want to stay connected to GPEC on this, then, you know, when we get ready to go down, when the budget has been dealt with and bills are heard in the Senate, and Senator Burns said that they will not go home after the budget, they will hear other bills, then join us down there and its advocacy for its bill. And if I'll tell you, when I was you know, I spent 4 years in the corporate world before I started doing this work, and I worked with a legislator once. And those legislators really respect a thoughtful advocacy statement from their constituents. It means a lot to them. And so if you do that, I think that'll be very powerful to let your state senator or state rep, whomever they are, know that this matters to you. Let them know you were here tonight, and let them know that you want to see Arizona become a leader in a new technology that will change our lives for the better.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to pass to Sherilyn the opportunity to thank everyone, and certainly she'll do that very well, I'm sure. I'd just like to end this technical portion of it by saying that those of us who are involved in this 1403 varying degrees are all confident that it is realistic, it is reasonable, it will attract business, and it should be successful, and it's important that all of us realize that. Basically, what this really does is you're sacrificing near-term revenue to gain a geometric increase in near-term and long-term revenue. And to a layman, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that is reasonable and realistic here. The great advantage if I were a firm in solar manufacturing is this transferable tax credit, or I get a tax credit, I can sell it on the open market and achieve cash to start building. So this is a good bill. I want to thank you, Barry, for doing that. But Sharon, you're the one who's going to thank people tonight.
And I just want to once again thank our partners. Clyde Goodman, one of the vice presidents of the college, and coincidentally is also the chairman of the Southwest Valley Chamber of Commerce. I thank you for advocating on our behalf so that we have this great gathering place. It's awesome. Thank you, Clyde. And I want to thank again each one of the panel. You know, you brought information to us, and obviously everybody in this room is interested. Watching your interest is fascinating and makes all of it worthwhile. But the one thing I would ask of you, please, when you leave here, make up your mind to contact at least one person. Talk to one person at a minimum to let them know about your passion for what we are trying to do here. We can make a difference in our state.